She chose an older dog because she believed people would prefer younger dogs and he might not get adopted. Her backyard didn't have a proper fence, but the dog was well behaved and stayed close, so she let him roam on his own sometimes. After a while, the dog began coming home with dollar bills. This happened repeatedly until one day the police knocked on her door. Was it because of the dog? And why was the dog bringing money home in the first place? To fully understand this story, we need a bit of background. Paige was a 25-year-old woman living alone in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Her last few relationships hadn't gone well, and she wanted a fresh start. After researching pets that make great companions, she decided to adopt a dog from the shelter. She chose an older dog named Rocky, hoping to give him a good, peaceful life. The first few months with Rocky were great. One evening, as usual, Rocky came home, and Paige got his food ready. He patiently waited in the dining room as she prepared his meal. But when she brought him his bowl, she noticed something strange. There was a small pouch tucked into his collar. Curious, Paige opened it, and to her shock, it was full of dollar bills. She counted the money, then counted it again, completely surprised. Could this really be happening? Paige's mind raced with questions. What should she do? Should she go to the police? She thought about it, but figured they wouldn't take her seriously just because she found money in her dog's collar. Instead, she decided to call a friend. However, Paige didn't mention the money. Instead, she invited her friend over for dinner and even offered to pay for everything. Her friend agreed, but when she arrived at Paige's house, she was shocked. Paige was dressed in a very expensive outfit, and her friend couldn't figure out how she had paid for it. Paige wasn't known for having extra money. When they arrived at the restaurant, Paige's friend was in for an even bigger surprise. Paige had made a reservation at Burns Steakhouse, an expensive restaurant in Tampa, Florida. Her friend asked how she had managed to pay for the new outfit and the fancy dinner, knowing Paige's usual financial situation. Paige had several options for answering, but what she said will blow your mind. Paige told her friend that she had gotten a new job with a top salary. Of course, this wasn't true at all. Meanwhile, Paige was getting herself deeper into trouble. She thought it was quite convenient that every time she let the dog out to wander, he returned with a pouch full of money. She stashed the money aside each time and used it to fulfill her fantasies of living large. One day, Paige got the mail, and an unexpected letter was waiting for her. The sender was someone she didn't recognize, and the letter was written entirely in Chinese. She had it translated, and as she read through the translation, chills ran down her spine, making her feel sick to her stomach. The letter, when translated, said, "We gave you the money. Now leave us alone. We'll finish the dog off when it gets back to us to clear all tracks." What was the letter talking about? For a moment, Paige didn't know what to do. What was she supposed to do now? Should she call the police? She couldn't go to her friend because her friend would find out that Paige had lied about her new job. Paige decided to keep completely quiet, hoping no one would find out about the money. Just as she was trying to calm herself down, the doorbell rang, nearly making her jump out of her skin. When Paige opened the door, the police were standing there. Did this have anything to do with the dog? She could barely speak. The police asked Paige if they could come in, and she had no choice but to let them. She was afraid the police were there because of the dog and the money, but it soon became clear that the police knew nothing about the dog at all. So why had they come to see Paige? Paige was full of questions. It had something to do with Paige's behavior. Paige's friend had heard about Paige's fancy date with a new guy. Her friend also thought it was strange that Paige had bought an expensive outfit and paid for a fancy dinner. Paige's friend had told the entire friend group about this, asking them not to tell Paige or anyone else. However, one of the friends thought the whole situation sounded very suspicious. The new guy, the new clothes, the sudden money. This friend decided to call the police and explain the story. She told them that Paige wasn't capable of affording such things, and the police understood that the friend wanted a wellness check on Paige. They made all the arrangements to check up on her. So, back to the police. After entering Paige's house, they explained the reason for their visit. They wanted to talk to Paige about her safety. They said that more and more women had been in situations like Paige's in the past, and they didn't want the same thing to happen to her. Paige, however, thought they were referring to the dog and the money. The point the police were trying to make was that they wanted to protect Paige from a potential predatory man. Paige became very angry at the officers. How could they say such a thing? Her date was a nice young man, and he certainly wasn't the one funding her. In fact, she had paid for his dinner. Paige had grown somewhat proud of her new monetary status. When she revealed all of this, the officers were very surprised. They asked how she could afford so many expensive dinners if she wasn't receiving money from a man. Paige finally decided to be honest. She couldn't avoid it any longer. She told the police about the dog. The officers asked Paige to come with them to the police station. What happened next was shocking. The police had been investigating some strange happenings in the city recently. Money appearing out of nowhere, people going missing, and illicit items being sold on the black market. They asked Paige for permission to search her entire house, suspecting that she might be involved in illegal activities to make so much money. She consented to the search and insisted that she was telling the truth. Then she suddenly remembered the letter she had received. Paige mentioned the letter to the officers, and the investigating agents went to her house to examine it. One agent looked at the other and said, "We've seen this before. We've got another one on our hands." The agents then began a full search of her house, which Paige had already consented to. During the search, they discovered something remarkable, a pouch lying on a dresser. The pouch was exactly as Paige had described it in her story about the dog. The officers took the pouch to examine it further, and inside they found several dollar bills. Had Paige put them there to make her story seem more legitimate? A woman came into the police station, and suddenly things started to make sense. She was Paige's neighbor and had noticed strange things happening at Paige's house. She wanted to share what she knew with the police. The neighbor told the officers she had seen the dog going into Paige's house every day for the past week, but something seemed off. She had also seen a strange man dropping the dog off at Paige's door multiple times. By this point, the police had already searched Paige's house but found nothing linking her to any illegal activities, so they decided to watch her house to see if the dog or the strange man would show up again. The next day, Paige let the dog out like usual, and the dog wandered into the nearby woods. The police waited. A few hours later, a man drove up and dropped the dog back at Paige's house. The police arrested him right there. And you won't believe it, the man was part of the mafia. The dog had been used to deliver payments, but when Paige adopted him, things got mixed up. Paige was allowed to keep the money she had already received, but the police told her to keep the dog indoors from now on. Everyone else involved was arrested. Paige wasn't getting any more money from the dog, so she had to be careful with her spending, but she was just relieved she wasn't in jail.